Have you ever felt lost in your own home? Like you're surrounded by familiar walls and faces, yet something inside you drifts quietly, searching for a place to belong? It's a subtle kind of sadness, an ache beneath the surface that whispers of things unsaid, dreams deferred, or battles quietly fought. If that feeling ever touches you, today's story might speak directly to your heart. In a small, weathered town where time seems to move a little slower, there is an old gas station resting by a dusty roadside. The paint is chipped, the sign hanging unevenly as if weighed down by years of sun and rain. Here, amid the hum of cicadas and the faint smell of gasoline, lives a woman named Elena Rivers. Elena is not a hero in the usual sense. She doesn't wear a cape or seek the spotlight. To the casual passerby, she is just another face in the crowd, quiet, unassuming, with a calm that hints at hidden strength. She carries the kind of resilience that only comes from walking through fire and refusing to be burned. Her gray jeans and faded khaki jacket tell stories of many long days spent on the road, of battles fought not with guns, but with courage and quiet resolve. Every morning, Elena follows a simple ritual. She pulls her car up to the gas pump, slides the nozzle into the tank, and listens to the slow drip of fuel filling the empty space. It's a mundane sound, a soft ticking like the pulse of an ordinary life. Yet beneath that ordinary moment lies a lifetime of experiences, a heart hardened by struggle, yet softened by compassion. She looks up occasionally, her eyes reflecting not just the bright, bleaching sun, but also the weight of a world that's not always kind to people like her. There is a stillness to her that feels almost sacred. It's the calm before a storm, the quiet breath taken before a plunge into unknown waters. Elena is someone who has seen the worst but still chooses to stand tall, carrying within her the strength of countless stories untold. She is both the witness and the warrior, wrapped in the gentle cloak of everyday life. You might see her as a stranger. Maybe you see yourself in her, because sometimes we all carry that quiet longing, the part of us that yearns to be seen, heard, and understood. Elena's story is not just about one woman in a small town. It's about all of us navigating the unseen battles beneath our calm exteriors. It's about the courage it takes to keep moving forward when the world expects you to fall. If you've ever felt that invisible weight, that silent struggle, this story is for you. And if you appreciate stories that do more than entertain, stories that make you pause, reflect, and feel deeply, consider subscribing to this channel. Together, we'll explore journeys that touch the soul and uncover the beauty hidden in life's quiet moments. So, let's step into Elena's world, a world that looks ordinary at first glance but holds within it the power to change everything. A story that begins with a simple act, yet unfolds into a journey of courage, truth, and justice. This is not just her story. It's a reflection of the battles many face every day, in places both familiar and far away. Stay with me, and let's discover what lies beneath the surface of everyday life. Because sometimes, it's the quietest voices that hold the loudest truths. Elena Rivers was halfway through filling her tank when the peace of that dusty, sun-bleached afternoon shattered. The quiet hum of cicadas, the distant rumble of a passing truck, the gentle hiss of fuel filling her car, all of it was suddenly pierced by the heavy crunch of gravel under boots. She glanced up from the pump and noticed a police cruiser idling nearby, its engine running but no one stepping out right away. It was just a small-town cop, but something about the way he looked sent a chill down her spine. Mark Tanner was his name, a local officer known for his tough demeanor and an unsettling reputation whispered about in hushed tones. His uniform was crisp, but his eyes held a coldness that made people step lightly when he was around. Elena had seen enough years navigating systems filled with shadows to know that danger wasn't always loud. It often came in quiet, calculated moments. Tanner approached her deliberately, his footsteps heavy and confident, like he owned the ground he walked on. His mirrored sunglasses caught the harsh sunlight, hiding his gaze but amplifying his presence. Elena didn't flinch, though inside, every instinct screamed caution. She remained calm, steady, her hands gripping the pump as if anchoring herself to the moment. "You lost or something?" Tanner's voice cut through the still air, dripping with mockery and menace. No greeting, no pretense of politeness, just raw, unfiltered authority. Elena turned slowly to face him, her expression unreadable behind dark sunglasses. "No, just getting gas." His gaze swept over her like she was a problem to be solved, an anomaly in a world where he was judge, jury, and executioner. "Where's home?" he pressed, tone hardening as the words rolled out like a threat. "I'm passing through," Elena said evenly. "I don't believe I'm obligated to answer that." Tanner's lip curled into a sneer. "Let me see your ID." Elena reached into her jacket, carefully withdrawing her driver's license. She didn't flash her FBI badge, knowing it wouldn't change anything for someone like Tanner. She handed over the license with steady hands, her eyes locked on his without fear or hesitation. He took it with a grimace, reading her name slowly as if savoring the moment. "Elena Rivers." He tapped the plastic against his palm. "What are you doing here?" "Like I said, getting gas." There was no one else around. The lot was empty save for a security camera in the corner and a teenage boy lingering near the vending machines, pretending to scroll on his phone but watching intently. Tanner noticed the kid but dismissed him with a glance. Elena shifted slightly, bracing herself. Tanner's eyes darkened as he stepped closer. "I don't like your attitude," he growled. She said nothing. That silence hung an unspoken tension thick enough to choke. Tanner's face twisted with fury, a fury fueled by a lifetime of unchecked power. Then, without warning, his boot slammed into Elena's left shin, right below the knee where there's no muscle to soften the blow. The sharp crack echoed quietly in the stillness. Elena dropped to the gravel, pain shooting through her leg and up into her core. Her jeans tore, skin scraped raw by the rough ground. Blood seeped through the fabric, hot and stinging. But she didn't cry out, not because it didn't hurt, but because she refused to give him the satisfaction of hearing her pain. Tanner stood over her like a man swatting a fly. "There, that's where you belong." He spat before turning his back and walking away. Elena stayed down a moment longer, breathing deeply to steady herself. She felt the hot sting of humiliation mingling with a fierce fire that flared inside. The teenage boy's shaky phone camera caught every second. The raw truth lay bare in unfiltered silence. When Elena finally pushed herself up, it wasn't a dramatic rise but a deliberate, steady motion. One that spoke of resilience forged in battles far beyond this empty gas station. Blood still trickled from her knee, her left hand scraped and coated in dirt, but her eyes were steady, cold with clarity. That video, barely a minute long, ignited a firestorm. Posted quietly by the boy with no followers, it spread like wildfire. Within hours, tens of thousands had seen the brutal kick, the fall, and the strength in Elena's silence. The hashtag Justice for Elena began trending on social media, stirring outrage and demanding answers. But for Elena, the viral video was only the beginning. Behind the scenes, She knew the system protecting Tanner was far bigger and more sinister than a single corrupt officer. She had spent years unraveling webs of deception and abuse, and this incident pulled at threads leading to the highest levels of local power. That night, seated alone in a dim motel room miles away from the gas station, Elena opened her laptop. Her fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard as she accessed a secure, encrypted network used only by federal agents working on covert investigations. Her eyes scanned endless internal files, complaints, incident reports, erased logs that all pointed to the same truth. Tanner was just the tip of the iceberg. Years of hidden abuses surfaced. Victims silenced by fear, complaints buried by officials, investigations quashed by those who wore badges but protected criminals. She uncovered names, dates, and patterns, all signed off by Sheriff Linda Calhoun, a woman whose spotless public record masked a ruthless protector of corruption. Elena knew she was up against a wall built of silence and complicity, but she also knew that walls crumble when enough cracks appear. Her colleagues sent her encrypted messages, offering help but warning of the danger. A confidential memo surfaced, recommending Tanner's suspension after a brutal assault, but it was swiftly denied by Sheriff Calhoun. The file was locked away, invisible to public scrutiny. Threats followed. Elena's car was set ablaze, a fiery warning to keep silent. Her motel room was broken into, her laptop battery stolen, external drives destroyed, and her personal space violated. Yet she refused to back down. Every step she took was measured, every move calculated. She became a ghost within the system, always watching, always gathering. With the help of trusted allies, Elena traced financial trails linking campaign donations, shell companies, and security contracts that financed the network protecting Tanner and Calhoun. Powerful politicians, like Senator Everett Grant, emerged as puppet masters, orchestrating the cover-ups and controlling the narrative. Public outrage swelled as more evidence leaked. Videos, audio recordings, and documents revealing conversations about suppressing victims and controlling media coverage. Elena's fight became a battle not just for justice, but for truth itself. Every day, the stakes grew higher. Friends turned distant, allies vanished, and threats escalated. But Elena's resolve hardened. She prepared for the inevitable courtroom showdown, where every secret would be exposed and the facade of power shattered. Her decision was clear. She would stand firm, not just for herself, but for every silenced voice. The choice was no longer about survival. It was about breaking a cycle that had lasted too long. The courtroom was a heavy chamber, thick with unspoken tension. Elena Rivers sat quietly in the back row. No badge, no uniform, just a woman armed with truth and an unbreakable spirit. Outside, the sun bled through stained glass windows, casting long, distorted shadows over the faces of those gathered. The air was suffused with the scent of old wood, paper, and anticipation. The kind that tightened throats and made hearts pound like drums. The day had come. After months of clandestine digging, secret meetings, and threats whispered in the dark, Elena was finally here to face the heart of the system that had tried to crush her. Mark Tanner, the officer who had kicked her down on that sun-scorched day, now sat on the defendant's chair. His usual swagger had faded into something hollow, a mask of arrogance slipping to reveal a man cornered by his own actions. His eyes darted nervously, searching for any hint of reprieve that might not come. Elena's hands lay folded in her lap, calm on the outside, but inside, every nerve thrummed with a mixture of exhaustion, fear, and an iron resolve. This was no longer just about her. It was about every person silenced by power, every voice stifled by fear, every wound hidden beneath the surface. The courtroom was silent as the prosecution began presenting the case. Witness testimonies poured forth, some familiar faces who had once spoken to Elena in hushed, trembling tones. They recounted moments of harassment, abuse, and systemic betrayal, their words weaving a tapestry of injustice. Then came the video, the raw, unedited clip of Tanner's brutal kick. The sound of gravel scraping skin, the fall, the blood, played on the screen. A collective intake of breath filled the room. No music, no commentary, just the piercing truth laid bare. Elena's gaze never wavered from the screen, her expression unreadable, steady as stone. The defense tried to unravel the narrative. Questions of provocation, political motives, even insinuations that Elena had set a trap. Their voices rose and fell like waves, desperate attempts to sow doubt where there should be none. But Elena had prepared for this moment. When called to the stand unexpectedly, she rose, not as a victim, but as a force. Dressed simply, she carried no signs of victimhood, only a small USB drive, silent, unassuming, but packed with the evidence of a sprawling corruption network. Her voice was low but carried across the hushed chamber. She laid out the tangled web of shell companies, political donations, and silenced complaints. She spoke not from anger but from a deep, unyielding commitment to justice. Her words painted pictures of betrayal. Officials who traded integrity for power, men who laughed at the suffering of others behind closed doors, and a system designed to protect itself rather than the people it served. She told the story of Sheriff Linda Calhoun, whose spotless record masked years of covering up abuse, of Senator Everett Grant, whose campaign coffers were filled with laundered money from shadowy security firms, of the men who plotted in smoke-filled rooms, dismissing victims as nobodies. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath, and in the silence that followed, Elena allowed a moment. A purposeful pause to let the weight of truth settle like dust in a forgotten room. She didn't need to shout. The evidence spoke volumes. The raw audio recordings captured secret meetings where plans to suppress justice were whispered with chilling nonchalance. The defense attorney's confident facade began to crack. Tanner's defiant words faltered under the relentless gaze of undeniable proof. Elena's mind drifted briefly, not to the courtroom, not to the battle raging before her, but back to that gas station. The sting of the kick, the rough gravel beneath her knee, the flicker of a young boy's phone camera capturing it all. That boy had no idea the power his silent witness would hold. She felt the fire that had kindled inside her all those months ago ignite into a fierce blaze. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. This was not a moment for weakness. It was a moment to be seen, not as a victim, but as a warrior. She thought of the countless others who had suffered in silence, whose names would never be spoken in courtrooms or headlines. Their pain was a river beneath the surface, deep and unrelenting. Her voice broke the stillness again, steady and clear. Justice is not given freely. It must be fought for, piece by piece, truth by truth. She looked directly at the jury, at the people whose hands would decide whether the scales would finally tip. The judge nodded, acknowledging the gravity of her testimony. Elena felt the weight of history pressing down, but also the fragile hope that this moment could mark a turning point. Outside, murmurs swelled. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras clicked. The world was watching. But inside, Elena was acutely aware of what came next. Her phone buzzed quietly in her purse. A message from Marcus, her closest ally. "You've done what many feared to try. Now hold steady." She exhaled slowly. The fight was far from over. Yet in this crucible of truth and pain, Elena found something she had not expected. A strange peace. A sense that, no matter the outcome, she had reclaimed her voice, and with it, the voices of so many others. The courtroom session ended with a heavy silence, broken only by the soft shuffle of papers and the distant ticking of a clock as she stepped down from the witness stand. Elena felt the weight of eyes upon her, some filled with admiration, others with disbelief. But none could deny the quiet power she carried. That day, in a room full of witnesses, Elena Rivers was no longer just a woman who had been kicked down. She was the storm that refused to be silenced. The courtroom emptied slowly, the heavy atmosphere lingering like a thick fog that refused to lift. Elena Rivers stood quietly, watching the jurors file out, their faces a mixture of contemplation, fatigue, and something close to respect. The hours of testimony, evidence, and raw truth had settled into the fabric of the room, altering it somehow, indelibly. She didn't linger to hear the verdict. Justice, she had learned, wasn't always swift. Sometimes it was slow, measured, and carried on the backs of those willing to endure the weight of truth outside. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky with bruised purples and fading golds. Elena stepped out into the cool air, her breath visible in soft clouds. The city hummed around her, a stark contrast to the stillness she carried inside. Her knee ached from old wounds, a reminder of the day everything changed. But that pain was different now. It was a testament, a scar etched not just on skin but in spirit. Marcus was waiting nearby, a steady presence in a world that often felt unstable. He greeted her with a quiet nod, no words needed. They walked together, side by side, through streets that held their own stories. Stories of people like her, fighting unseen battles every day. The press was outside the courthouse, eager for a statement, a reaction, a headline. But Elena declined. Her story wasn't one for sound bites or fleeting headlines. It was for the slow work of change, the kind that seeped into laws, into hearts, into the structures that shaped lives. Back in her small apartment, Elena sat by the window, the city lights flickering below like distant stars. She opened a worn notebook, the one she'd kept through the darkest days, and traced her fingers over the pages filled with notes, memories, names of people who had been silenced, erased, forgotten. She whispered each name softly, a private ceremony of remembrance. Her phone buzzed, a message from Denise, their shared strength and partner in exposing the truth. The hearing brought light, but the path is long. Are you ready for what's next? Elena smiled faintly, a mixture of weariness and resolve. Ready as ever. She knew the battle had shifted from public courts to quiet offices, from fiery speeches to paperwork and policies. But she was prepared, because real change rarely came with fanfare. It came in moments like these, in the unyielding commitment to see things through when no one was watching. Days passed. The media cycle spun faster than ever, some praising Elena as a hero, others attempting to discredit her with whispers and half-truths. But she remained grounded, anchored by a sense of purpose that went beyond personal vindication. In the aftermath, the wheels of justice turned. Officer Tanner faced suspension and an internal review that promised real consequences for the first time. Sheriff Calhoun, once untouchable, was under investigation. Senator Grant's campaign funds were scrutinized by federal prosecutors, the financial labyrinth slowly unraveling. Yet, Elena understood the complexity of what lay ahead. The system was vast and its roots ran deep. One victory did not erase years of silence, nor did it heal every wound. But it was a beginning. A crack in the wall that had held injustice in place for too long. One evening, as Elena walked through a quiet park, she paused by a bench. A mother sat nearby, holding her child close, their laughter breaking the stillness. It was a simple scene, but it struck Elena profoundly. She thought about the young boy at the gas station, the one who had filmed that moment of violence, and how his courage had set everything in motion. She thought about the countless others whose small acts of bravery went unnoticed. Life, she realized, was made of these moments. Fragile, fleeting, yet powerful. Elena reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded drawing, a gift from a child she'd met during the trial. It depicted a woman standing tall, golden light behind her, eyes full of determination. Beneath it, the words, "She didn't fall. She was just getting up." She smiled, folding the drawing carefully and tucking it away. It was a reminder not just of her own journey, but of the resilience that lived in all of us. That night, she wrote a letter, not to a judge, not to the press, but to herself. This is not the end. It is a chapter, a call to continue, to hold fast when the world feels heavy, to listen when others whisper their truths, to stand, even when the ground shakes beneath your feet. Elena folded the letter and placed it in her notebook. She closed the book gently and looked out at the night sky, the stars like watchful eyes. She thought about the future, the challenges, the victories yet to come, the sacrifices still demanded. But for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. Not the flashy hope sold in slogans or promises, but the quiet hope born of action and courage. Because justice was not a moment. It was a movement, and Elena Rivers was ready to keep walking. No matter how long the road that in the quiet aftermath of battle, Elena Rivers found herself reflecting not on the grand gestures or the courtroom drama, but on the small moments that had carried her through. It wasn't the spotlight or the viral video that defined her story. It was the silent resilience, the unseen acts of bravery, and the strength found in standing firm when no one else would. Life, she realized, is not measured by the magnitude of our victories, but by the courage to keep moving forward when everything seems stacked against us. It's in the tight hugs given when words fail, the shared glances that say, "I see you," and the quiet decisions made in the face of fear. Elena's journey wasn't just about fighting corruption or exposing injustice. It was about reclaiming dignity, about reminding the world that every person, no matter how small or silenced, holds a spark of power within. That truth doesn't need to roar to be heard. Sometimes it's the softest voice that echoes the longest. She understood now that systems, no matter how entrenched, are built by people, and people can change. Change doesn't happen overnight or in sweeping motions. It happens in the slow, persistent breaking down of walls, in the tending of wounds, and in the collective will to create something better. And though the road ahead was uncertain, Elena was no longer afraid of the darkness, because she had learned that light, once ignited, can spread in ways unseen. It could flicker in a child's drawing, in a whistleblower's courage, or in the steady heartbeat of someone who refuses to give up. Her story was one of many, woven into the vast tapestry of human struggle and hope. She had become more than a survivor. She had become a keeper of that fragile beauty called justice. As she looked toward the horizon, Elena felt a profound connection to those who had fought before her, to those who would fight after, and to the quiet strength that lives in us all. And in that moment, she knew that true victory wasn't about defeating an enemy, but about nurturing the light that refuses to be extinguished. If this story has stirred something inside you, if it has touched a quiet corner of your heart, I invite you to join this journey, not just as a spectator, but as a companion. Subscribe, and together we will honor the fragile, beautiful fight for truth and justice, one story at a time. Because in the end, it's not the grand moments that define us, but the simple, steadfast acts of courage and hope that keep the world turning.